What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com. After the Packers fall to the Oakland Raiders 13-6 out in Oakland. A very sloppy game, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Packers sat 18 people, including starting quarterback Aaron Rodgers and a good chunk of the starting offensive line. And that went about as well as you would expect. A very sloppy affair. Obviously, I think the talk coming out of this game will be the atrocious performance by the starting for this game offensive tackles, namely Kyle Murphy at right tackle. He definitely struggled. Adam Pankey actually stepped in the second half and actually looked pretty good in comparison. But hello to everybody in the comments. So nice to see you all. Why did Tim Boyle get no reps? John, most likely because they're trying to settle this backup position. And Boyle's most likely not going to be on the roster, and you're trying to get film on the two guys who are battling for the backup job for Aaron Rodgers. And in that competition, you have to think tonight Hundley put himself out in front. After last week, it looked like Kaiser had taken a step forward. Tonight was all Hundley. Kaiser had one or two really nice throws, but for the most part, I did not think he played well at all. Now, of course, some of that is about who he has around them, but you also have to be accountable for your decision making as a quarterback and what you're doing pre-snap, where you decide to go with the ball, sometimes predetermined. There was that wheel route that was almost picked by a former Packer in LaShawn Pringle. That's a ball that never should have been thrown, and there were two or three throws like that. Whereas Hundley, I thought, commanded the line of scrimmage really well. Save for one or two plays, had really good command of the huddle and the pocket. His pocket presence was pretty good tonight. Made some really big-time throws. Obviously didn't get the ball into the end zone, but for the most part, I thought he looked, noticeably more in command of the offense than Kaiser did. Gilbert and Jackson are for real. I tell you what, Josh Jackson's going to be hard to keep off the field. You saw, obviously, his pick six tonight was brought back due to the penalty on the opposite end of the field, totally away from the play. But that's a big-time play. He basically ran that route for the wide receiver, undercut the ball, and took it to the house. That is a big-time play, and that is coming, obviously, after last week's pick six. Ball skills. That's what the Packers wanted to add when they drafted Alexander and Jackson, and they certainly got that. As far as Gilbert goes, I'm with you, man. You saw he played, a good chunk of the first quarter, but after that he disappeared, and rightfully so. They're going to need him this year. They're still not getting much out of Fackrell. I thought Vince Beagle actually had a pretty solid night tonight. He did some really nice things. But Gilbert's your guy that's going to give you a little juice when it comes to rushing the passer this season. And you saw, a couple of examples of that again tonight. Namely, that first third down in the red zone where he pushed Donald Penn right into Derek Carr's lap. That's a big-time play. So I would agree. Gilbert and Jackson both shined tonight. Nick, thank you very much. Kaiser was better in the pocket. Well, he had a pocket. That was the thing. Kaiser, it was funny because he, for the most part, didn't have his offensive tackles in his lap on every single obvious passing down like Hundley did. And I thought Hundley handled it pretty darn well. Kaiser was better in the pocket because he had a pocket. Our D-backs played pretty nice. I would agree. Hundley would have won it, so clutch. All right, slow down. Does McCarthy have credibility with players? Didn't even seem to talk to Nelson. Well, you can't go by what the TV shows you. Don't ever do that. So much happens that you guys don't see on TV. He has a lot of credibility with players. And you got to remember, Mike McCarthy's not the one who cut him. That was Brian Gutekunst. Same line, come on, Dave, not at all. Adam Pankey was in at right tackle. And Dylan Day was in at center. It was totally different lines. What are you talking about? Patrick, thank you. Thanks for checking it out. Which wide receivers make the 53 based on the current state? I think, funnily enough, I think Kumaro makes it, provided he's all in the clear after that shoulder injury, which obviously kept him out tonight. Jamal Moore made a little bit of noise tonight. A couple nice catches, including one where he got absolutely lit up. Those are the types of plays that particular play is the kind of thing Aaron Rodgers was talking about when he said earlier this week, the kid just needs one big play, and that definitely qualifies. And outside of that, I thought he played pretty darn well tonight. A couple of catches, some nice run after the catch. We'll see if that sparks him into a kind of position as far as making the squad. Funny thing is I thought, the game one darling in Valdez-Scantling was pretty invisible tonight and included a bad fumble on kickoff return. Trevor Davis is still sitting there, obviously hasn't participated because of the hamstring injuries, but he's the one guy on the roster that you can set back there at kick return, and he's going to do the job. We've had Montgomery fumble. We've seen Valdez-Scantling fumble. That helps. That helps Davis's bid to try and make the roster. We'll see how it plays out. There's still some practices and another preseason game to go, but that could end up helping sort out the wide receiver mess, so to speak. Equanimeous St. Brown obviously had no catches tonight that I recall. I know he was thrown out a few times, but they got one more game to go. But there's a good chance that Kumaro and Davis helped themselves tonight by not even being on the field. Worst offense sets I've seen, worst O-line depth in the NFL, Edwin. That would indicate you don't watch a lot of the rest of the NFL in the preseason, because everybody's backup offensive line is atrocious across the league. It's funny. I was going to talk about that. I remember last year when everyone was chicken little about the offensive line and how terrible they were playing, and provided, yes, absolutely, the backup line last year in preseason in the summer looked terrible. But then you got into the season, and James Campen did some yeoman's work. You got to remember, most of these guys are never going to play together. If and when injury strikes along the offensive line, there will be one person that has to come in, especially if one of the tackles goes down. You have to think Lane Taylor probably kicks out again like he did last year. But then someone like McCray or Pankey or somebody will be inserted in the line, and then James Campen has to make that combination work of whoever's in there for the injured guy plus the other regular starting four. In that scenario and in that setting, the Packers have been okay. They were certainly all right last year. Campen did some great work with the group. I think they started 6 different offensive line combinations prior to week 7. They were 4-1 prior to Rodgers' injury. So, you look at the backup offensive line in the preseason and you say, oh my gosh, they're so terrible, et cetera, et cetera. Well, yes, everybody's backup offensive lines when they're playing together, especially when the Packers line, which was almost consisting entirely of backups, was going against the first-string defense of the Oakland Raiders. Well, yeah, they got run over. Yeah, they got handed to them in the run game, of course. The point is to find the most talented, 8, 9 guys, 10 guys maybe, and get them together and let you get your starting 5. And you got James Campen coaching up the rest, and when injury strikes, you make do. It's not, that much different than anywhere else in the NFL. And I know it was hard to watch tonight. There's no doubt about it. But that's not an indictment on what you're going to see this season in any way, shape, or form. We're going to give Boyle a shot. A couple Boyle questions in a row. Look, I know people are excited about him, but he's a practice squad guy. He's not vying for any kind of significant time from scrimmage this year. They have to get tape on both Hundley and Kaiser to figure out who's going to be backing up Aaron Rodgers. You saw a season completely wasted last year because their backup wasn't ready. They're trying to make sure that doesn't happen again, and Hundley took a big step to solidifying that position tonight. Glenn, Jermon Williams to safety. I saw some people talking about that on Twitter. I would be surprised if they made that move now. Maybe down the road at some point. I doubt it even happens this season, but maybe next year. But, you know, he's gone through an entire offseason program, and they've predicated their entire defense on thinking that he is a corner. It's funny because if you put the rewind machine on and go back like a month, people were talking about, oh, maybe Josh Jackson should move to corner or to safety. How silly does that look now? You know, like, don't be a prisoner of the moment. Tramon Williams is going to play corner for them. He's going to play it well. Maybe they make the move down the line, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Any word on Burke's injury? No. Only thing we know is that it happened in pregame warmups. No word on severity, and you know Mike McCarthy's not going to say anything postgame. The Packers and the NFL does not require teams to give out any kind of injury updates in the preseason. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get some kind of word tomorrow at some point when McCarthy talks. Alexander had a nice pick. Chase, that's the kind of interception where, you know, he's trailing there and a better ball probably beats him, but he took advantage of a bad throw, and that's something, you know, with a real athletic play. Obviously, he's on the shorter side, and he had a sky to get it, but that's the kind of play that they weren't getting out of the defensive backfield. You know, they've seen plenty of bad throws. They just haven't been able to take advantage of them. And that is exactly why Alexander was drafted where he was. You know, he's got some ball skills. He's got athleticism. He's going to be a playmaker. Go up and get the ball. That's what he did. Thigh injury, all we know is it's a foot injury. But at this point, I mean, it was funny because at the beginning of the game, they were handing him the football and they were, you know, running him into the line over and over. And I thought, this is Mike, to me, this is what it seems like. It's Mike McCarthy going, or I've got to be able to trust you. I've got to be able to trust you to run this football in a physical game and be able to get through it without some kind of nagging little injury. And of course, that didn't happen. And of course, that has happened repeatedly for Montgomery since he's come into the league. He can do some really nice things with a football in his hand, especially in space. But when he's nicked up every single, you know, seemingly every single game, probably every other game in reality, you can't trust the guy. You can't count on him. I would tend to think that there's a possibility that he put his roster spot in jeopardy tonight. And that might sound like hyperbole, but at some point, you can't count on a guy who is nicked up every single time you give him significant action. They're not signing Bowman. That is correct, Mike. Brewers won in the 15th. I know, Tony. I would have been on a little bit sooner, except I was watching the end of it because I couldn't believe that the Packers game ended before the Brewers game did. That's insanity. How do you think about our first-string defense not looking too good against the Raiders' vanilla offense? I don't know how vanilla it was. You know, taking a deep shot there, first play. Held in the red zone, right? I don't know what you're saying to constitute they didn't look too great. They kept them out of the end zone. Isn't that the idea? Jackson's pick, super sweet. I agree. That was a hell of a play. I talked about it a little bit before. Hundley is horrible. He has no range. I thought he played pretty darn well tonight, actually. I'm going to bed. DeMario, so am I. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Sorry if I couldn't get to your question. They do fly by very fast. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in to all my Facebook Lives while I've been with Packers News. This is my last Facebook Live. This is the last piece of content I'm producing for PackersNews.com. I will be creating Packers content, covering the Packers going forward. Just won't be here. If you're interested in what I'm doing, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Aaron Nagler, or check me out on Facebook. Search Nagler Packers and you'll find the page. Thank you so much. Make sure you check all the coverage at PackersNews.com. Coming out of tonight into tomorrow and going forward. The guys do the best job in the whole world of covering a team. You guys have no idea. As someone who covered the NFL for over a decade in various guises and in various spots, I've been all around the league, seen all the different media landscapes at each individual city and team, and the Packers are covered better than anybody, anywhere in the league. You guys have an embarrassment of riches, especially when it comes to PackersNews.com. So make sure you're checking all their stuff out each and every day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot, everyone.